So we have an amazing group of panelists, an amazing audience. We will have audience Q&A. But first, let's introduce the concept of Ask a Sista. Ask a Sista actually began 17 years ago at Netroots. It is almost as old as Netroots Nation itself. And the first session was pretty radical. There had really never been a panel like this at Netroots Nation. So it began with the question, why not just ask a Sista what her thoughts and feelings are and how she thinks we can transform electoral politics and just the whole system, just all of it. How do we make it better? So we all know now, that Black women's contributions to democracy itself, let alone the Democratic Party, cannot be denied. So we're going to talk, about that. There's going to be some comedy. There's going to be some commentary. There'll be laughter. There might be tears. We'll see. But we want to give a special shout out to Latosha Brown of Black Voters Matter, Eljoy Williams, yes, of the New York chapter of the NAACP, and Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who was on the last panel but was not able to stay for this panel, could not make it due to scheduling. So you just heard a mix from Representative Jasmine Crockett's legendary bleach blonde, bad-built, butch body, okay, in which, she gave it back and stood up for herself, which is a thing that Black women often have to do, right? That we often find that, no one is coming to save us or protect us, that, if we're going to get respect, we have to demand it when it is taken from us. So I'm your moderator who's talking to you. It's me, it's Cheryl Conti. I happen to be the board chair of Netroots Nation. I'm very proud, thank you. First Black chair of Netroots Nation. I am the chief executive officer at the Impact Seat Foundation, which is working to create a world in which women, especially women of color, can succeed as business leaders. Did you know that Black women are launching startups at the highest rate of any demographic in the United States, including white men, and yet they are the least capitalized? This is not Adam Smith's invisible hand. That math don't math. So I'm working on that. I'm also the Amazon best-selling author of Mechanical Bull, How You Can Achieve Startup Success, now available in audiobook with a post-COVID version. I'm currently working on a practical, tactical guide to AI for nonprofits with Darian Rodriguez-Heyman, publisher Wiley. He's best known as a thick tome called Nonprofit Management 101. Look it up. Over 50 different experts in AI have committed to interviews for the book, so we're really excited about that. I'm the co-founder of Attentively, which was the first tech startup with a Black female founder to be acquired by a NASDAQ company, and the first portfolio company member of New Media Ventures. You can see them at the New Tools Showcase. Right beside me, to my right, is Dr. Kimberly C. Ellis, AKA Dr. Goddess. Yes, affectionately known as Dr. Goddess. She has a PhD. She is a scholar of American and Africana studies. She is an artist, an activist, and an entrepreneur, as well as a playwright, world traveler, and international thought leader on culture, gender, and social technology. She's just deigned to be here, okay, with you people. She is also the co-founder of the civic tech project Black Voters Matter, the co-founder of Ask a Sista, the author of the upcoming book, The Bombastic Brilliance of Black Twitter. Yeah. Yes. She has produced You Are Beautiful to Me, a feature documentary film chronicling the journey of her mother's dementia. She's an expert on playwright August Wilson's work and on the community known as Black Twitter, of course. She is the founding executive director of the Historic Hill Institute, which is the historic preservation organization of that neighborhood in which August Wilson, yes, is born. There's so much more to tell you about her. She is the lead historian and storyteller in the Tulsa Burning documentary, which debuted on the History Channel in 2021. Next to her is Nsé Ufot, hard T, yes. She is the illustrious founder of the New South Super PAC and former CEO of the New Georgia Project. Yes, yes, yes. Which was founded by Stacey Abrams. Yes, yes. Who some people might have heard of. She is a dedicated advocate for civil, human, and workers' rights. Insee led campaigns that helped over 700,000 Georgians, basically all of Georgia, register to vote and moved millions of people to take action and affect change. She is a pioneer in tech as well. Her company, Solidarity Analytics and Media, is building technology that empowers people with powerful tools to connect. SAM is a new platform that is using the latest AI and data tools to change our world for the better. Yes. And last but certainly not least, our local hero, Tiffany Carlock, AKA Candidly Tiff. She is a leading social media influencer based right here in Baltimore, Maryland. She knows the governor, Wes Moore. Yeah, if you look online, she's holding hands with him and everything, and Kamala. She is educating people about civics, voting. She's spreading awareness about Democratic candidates and the importance of elections, especially here in Maryland, which, as you know, recently elected their first Black governor. Yes. Tiffany also works full-time in the healthcare industry as an executive at Cigna. You can find her at Tiffy330 on Twitter/X, where she has over 40,000 followers, y'all. And as candidly_Tiff on Instagram and TikTok. Okay, we are now done with the preliminaries. You know who these people are. Okay, we're all settled there.
Wait.
There's more. Okay.
Cheryl is neglecting to mention, first of all, she is our tech mother. And she did not mention that you probably already knew her years ago when she went anonymously as Jill Tubman, writing on Black politics. So in many ways, she's our original Ask a Sista, and she literally went underground to tell everybody about themselves. Give Cheryl a round of applause.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that blog was called Jack and Jill Politics. Yeah, some of you might remember it. Its logo was like a slice of watermelon with a bite, which should give you a sense of what we were doing there. All right, so it's time to snatch some wigs. We've come to that place in the program. So I think we all collectively snatch Trump's wig. He wears a literal wig, so it's there to be snatched. But we're going to be specific. Right? I will say I'm going to snatch the wigs of the entire senior staff of Joe Biden, who let him walk out onto the debate like that, okay? Like that shouldn't have happened, right? George Clooney and George Stephanopoulos have it right, okay? We might need to, rethink our strategy there. Dr. Goddess, whose wig are you snatching today?
Well, I'm going to snatch the wig of Judge Carolyn Wall. She is a Trump appointee, a judge in Oklahoma, and the entire Oklahoma Supreme Court for neglecting to provide reparations for the survivors and those who did not survive the Tulsa Massacre of 1921. Yes, indeed. Snatch it.
I'm here to snatch Edward Bloom's wig.
Yes.
Edward Bloom is the founder of a group called Project on Fair Representation. And you will hear the name and you're like, fair representation, girl, why are you a hater? What's wrong with that? But he has single-handedly been one of the most destructive forces in sort of race-conscious admissions and this attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion in corporate and in other spaces. Literally, they say that it's a membership organization. It's a membership organization of one. And he's well-resourced by the far right and the center-right foundations. And he literally just sues all day trying to attack affirmative action and has been successful.
All right, well, I know you guys have probably heard about Project 2025. So we are going to snatch the wig of the Heritage Foundation and those Republicans, because Donald Trump definitely knows about Project 2025. He can stop, he can't front on that, okay? If you don't know what it is, they want to take away the Department of Education, meaning they want to make us stupid again, okay? This doesn't make any sense. They also want to take away the FDA. Think about what they want to do. They want to send us back in time, take away our rights. No, of course, their favorite new word, DEI. They don't want the DEI, and we know what that means. So I think we need to make sure that we win in November so we can snatch all their wigs.
Yes.
Indeed.
And of course, again, collectively, we share the deep desire to snatch all of the wigs of the Supreme Court.
Yes.
I mean, really,
Yes.
not all of them, but most of them. Yeah, most of them. All right, so I have some questions for these ladies, and then after a while, we would love to hear from you and your thoughts and questions for us. But Dr. Goddess, yes, you co-founded Ask a Sista right here at Netroots Nation.
Did.
As rumor has it. What do you think the impact has been upon Black women in the political sphere since then? Or how has society shifted in its assessment of Black women politically since you first founded Ask a Sista?
Yeah, so when we were at Netroots Nation in Las Vegas, we decided to start Ask a Sista. It was an idea, and one of my colleagues said, well, maybe we should have something like Ask a Black Lady, and I was like, no. Ask a Black Lady, I love the concept, but Ask a Black Lady just did not sit right with me. And so I, took it home, and I was like, well, and then I didn't just want to talk about politics, because culture, right? Culture is everything. Culture beats, what is it? Culture eats strategy for breakfast, right?
Every day.
So initially we had a much longer title. And then Cheryl thankfully said, maybe we could like bring that down to, just politics and pop culture, which was appropriate. It was appropriate. So we had like 4 different things. But it's really important because only in 2020, right? Suddenly we got all this. Thank you so much, Black women. Thank you. You saw pictures of Nsay, pictures of Stacy, pictures of Latasha, finally saying, thank you, Black women, for the work that you've done. And it's like, first of all, Ask a Sista is literally 17 years old. So like we waited until, I don't know. It's just odd. I think in general, when I think about Auntie Maxine, when I think about Barbara Lee, when I think about other Black women, my current congressional representative is Summer Lee, okay? So when I think about all of those women, regardless, Black women who are outspoken and who are honest and straightforward, they're still positioned as problematic. And I remember when things turned the corner for Auntie Maxine, because remember, she was the problematic congresswoman. Remember that? It was like, oh, Auntie Maxine, she always goes, well, they didn't call her Auntie, but we did. But, Maxine Waters, she always goes too far type thing. And then when she went in on Trump, and she was like, I will never accept him, right? Remember, she was like, no, there won't be any, Van Jones, who used to attend Netroots, was like, oh, he was very presidential, right? And Maxine was like, no, never going to accept him. But now Maxine Waters is seen as like a normalized voice. But we should all keep in mind that Black women are often crafted as problems, as they go too far. They're too much. And so we're done with being two. That's another reason, like, I had to take a quick break from Ask a Sista, but that's why we came back. And are y'all glad we're back? Yeah. Thank you. So all of that to say, it's really important to reframe ourselves, to always tell our collective truths, and to always be honest. And we don't all agree. That's the fun part about it. But when we have conversation together, the conversation is elevated because we're already at a certain place. And so we can disagree with each other and come up with a wonderful solution, whereas talking to people who are, quite frankly, lesser than, it would just bore us and bring us down. So always Ask a Sista and Muse on politics and pop culture.
Indeed. And say, We already talked about the fact that you served as the executive director of the New Georgia Project. Pause for applause. As it were.
Former.
You can applaud again. You can applaud again. You helped former. You served. You helped to turn Georgia blue in 2020, and to make purple, and purple, and to make some sweeping changes in the Georgia legislature. People don't always remember that too. That
Big facts.
Local, yeah. So what's changing in the New South?
Yeah.
Right? What's changing in the New South, and what are the challenges and opportunities ahead in Georgia specifically?
I don't know if people know this. I was born in Nigeria, raised in Southwest Atlanta, became a U.S. citizen when I realized that I couldn't fill out the FAFSA and get all of the benefits. No, I'm kidding. So my mom got a second job. We became citizens. We took the exam. It was a whole thing. What's changing in Georgia, in the Deep South, and in this country, I think one thing is demographics. So we are witnessing a rapid, aggressive, and unique demographic shift in the Deep South that, what political scientists refer to as the Great Migration, right? Between the 1920s and the 1970s, there was a mass exodus of Black Americans leaving the Deep South and going to the coast, into the Midwest, right? So Black folks in Chicago trace their roots to Mississippi, Black folks in New York and New Jersey trace their roots to the Carolinas and Georgia, et cetera, following those migration patterns. Well, we're seeing a reversal of that in this particular moment, and people are moving back south, particularly college-educated. African Americans are moving back south. The weather's better, the job opportunities, et cetera, housing. And nowhere are we seeing that demographic shift happen more aggressively than a place like Georgia. And Georgia is different from Arizona and all of the other places that are rapidly becoming people of color because it is really being driven by the reversal of the Great Migration. And so it's also a ton of African and Caribbean and Afro-Latino immigrants. So the sort of what it means to be Black, what Black politics means, what a Black political agenda means has grown and gotten more sophisticated and more aggressive in the South, but also in the country. And again, by 2025, Georgia is being projected to be a minority white state. Now, what I will say is that demographics don't automatically equal destiny. So you can have a state like California and you can have a state like Texas. Both states have white minorities. Both states have very different politics, right? And so Georgia and North Carolina and states like that are literally at the moment where they are determining the direction that they're gonna move into, and we can't rely on the history. History informs what's possible, but it can't predict what is possible. And so the organizing that is happening, the multiracial, multilingual, multi-generational opportunities, they're creating opportunities for real progressive wins in the Deep South. So people with the maps in their minds of what's a red state and what's a blue state, they're quickly becoming obsolete.
And say, everybody, born next to a river and been running ever since. Yes. All right, Tiffany.
Also big facts.
Yeah. You've been teaching civics, for a long time in various forms, right now on internets. What's the political climate like here in Maryland, and what are you witnessing across the nation? How do we bring home, some of the big wins, that have happened here, from people who seem to equate, the two lead presidential candidates as equal, right, which they are not, or have just, grown apathetic?
Yeah, so here in Baltimore and Maryland as a whole, like you said, we have the first Black governor, the only Black governor in America at the moment. So that was hard work. I mean, that took a lot of hard work. It was a hard primary fought. We have a Black mayor of the city who was, they came at him earlier in the year, calling him the DEI, as he says, duly elected incumbent. But what we have witnessed is a kind of a regeneration of what is happening here, because we first of all, we had no women. We actually have no women in our congressional delegation. So you're seeing a resurgence of women coming back into our politics, which there was a lot of men, and white men. And we are also seeing we are a majority minority state, right? So we have power here. Voters have power here. So we are using our power to get the policies that we want done. As we talk about progressive policies, with Westmore, we got the $15 minimum wage passed. We are getting things done. And I think also, and this, as I say also Brooks, remember that name, Angela Also Brooks. She will be the next senator from Maryland, and she is a black woman. It was a hell of a fight to get her to be elected as our nominee. We went up against David Trone, who had $60 million of his own that he was using to try to get elected. We worked the ground. We went and knocked on doors. That woman was at the mall, at the train station. She was at she was at Wegmans. She was talking to everyone. And so what we found is that if we can actually meet voters where they are, we can convince them to actually go out, because a lot of people don't necessarily watch TV, so they're not seeing commercials of candidates, right? How do you reach a voter online? How do you reach a voter on the ground? Knocking door. We can do that now. It's 2024. We can knock on doors. We can make phone calls. We can text people. But the most important thing is actually speaking to a voter, because you can convince them that their vote matters. And I think that's what we did to help her. And so, yes, remember that name, Angela Also Brooks.
Okay, thank you, Tiffany. All right, so back to you, Dr. Goddess. Circling back, you've been saying, that you don't want us to miss the active attack upon, and the lessons, we can learn from the impact of the Black Lives Matter movement. What is it that the people need to know? Educate us, please.
Okay, so Cheryl accidentally misread a part in my bio. I'm not the co-founder of Black Voters Matter. That's Latasha and Cliff, okay? And they're friends of mine, so, I'm not trying to steal their, I'm the founder of Black Politics Matter. And the reason why that's important is because at the time that Black Lives Matter emerged, I'm an activist anyway, so those who were just engaged in activities on the ground, et cetera, I wasn't initially on the ground. I was on Twitter. And I was one of the Twitter activists that held the media responsible. And it was exhausting, y'all, because people forget that Black folks showed up at CNN, right? And told them, you misrepresent us, we hate you, basically. Long before, other people were criticizing and so on and so forth. That's a result of Black Lives Matter. And it's because of the coverage around Trayvon Martin, in particular, and the coverage around George Zimmerman. And I just want people to remember that those of us who were on Twitter, we're literally known as Trayvon warriors, because that story hasn't been told just yet, but it will be, I promise. Trayvon warriors literally transferred over, and we were some of the early activists on Twitter with Black Lives Matter. So when Alicia wrote the post and Patricia put it out there and so on, yes, all of that happened. But when Ferguson first jumped off, you had to have people that were, we watched the live stream, because we didn't get any sleep, by the way. We watched the live stream, and we would live tweet what was happening, make sure that we were in touch with people on the ground, really getting the word out. And then the media would pick up on whatever happened the night before and try to mischaracterize. So we had to call them into question. So literally we didn't get a lot of sleep. I remember that I barely slept for the first 2 to 3 weeks of Ferguson. And at the time, just full disclosure, my mom was in the nursing home, so I was literally tweeting from her room, but it's okay. I mean, you did what we wanted to do. But I think the important part is we're being convinced, let me just say this. There's righteous and justice internal critique of how Black Lives Matter unfolded. Even the founders will tell you that they weren't prepared, to go viral initially. They weren't always prepared, but they were all activists. Keep in mind Alicia, she was with the National Domestic Workers Alliance. Patrice was with the Ella Baker, Center for Justice. And oh, I'm going blank, I'm sorry. And Opal was with Black Justice for Immigration, something like that. I'm sorry, I'm messing up the names. But they were all organizers already. So not being prepared for a viral moment is not their fault. But there were activists that were hurt and sort of, they felt left out of decision making, they felt left out of some of the results that occurred. And those are valid. I want to say that unequivocally. We should have another conversation about that internally, right? Because I don't dismiss anybody's complaints or criticism. However, what has happened since then is a full-on attack on Patrice, Alicia, and Black Lives Matter as a whole, and this is not new. And a lot of it came out of the New York Post. And overall, the attempt is to tell America, especially white folks, you wasted your money on these black folks. And black folks, you don't know how to govern yourselves. That's the overall message. And it is meant to communicate to us that in spite of the fact that we developed the best, most modern movement in the history of America, that translated to at least 30 different countries, that did change people's lives, that did affect local legislation, that did elect local people who represented these communities. This is the largest gaslighting I have ever seen. And I want everybody to keep in mind, Black Lives Matter was absolutely successful. And you cannot let homophobes, transphobes, sexists, you can't let them make you believe that, oh, Black Lives Matter was hijacked by the gay folks. No, because actually, Black Lives Matter means all Black Lives matter. We were always talking about the women. We were always talking about the gays. We were always talking about the trans in our community. And yes, it was about black people. And certainly it was around police abuses, but we know it was more than that. And yes, the criminalization and abuse and police terror, it looks different on some different populations. But, you know, to my brothers, it was never just about you, first of all. And then second of all the black men that I know that are very sensible, they knew that. They know it, they knew it. So if you were at the convention in Ohio like I was, it was really a beautiful moment. It was transformative in many different ways because the MCs were some of the trans members of our community, and it was beautiful. And you saw heterosexual black men going to these different workshops and so on. You just saw a level of community that was progressive and transformative. But the one thing that they didn't have actually was voter registration. And that upset me so much because as much as I consider myself a progressive, I'm a pragmatic progressive. And for me, it was unacceptable to not have voter registration, especially in Ohio, because Tim McGinty was still the prosecutor, and Tamir Rice had just been killed not that long ago. So I decided to add a corrective measure, you know, and created Black Politics Matter. But the important part, I can't emphasize enough to don't believe the hype about Black Lives Matter. Yes, there is legitimate criticism in terms of the unfolding and the organization and so on and so forth, but no, people did not run off and steal the money. Nobody has gone to jail. Like, you just don't believe the hype. It was a beautiful, transformative movement, yes, largely online, transferred into the streets and across the world, and don't you ever, ever forget it.
Well, all right, broke it down. So just for the record, Latasha Brown equals Black Voters Matter. Kimberly C. Ellis equals Black Politics Matter. There's some that's in the middle. It's in the middle. So you just got international on us, you know, in terms of talking about, right, you know, the international impact, you know, how, you know, people of color and, you know, everyone was inspired, you know, around the world, right, on Black Lives Matter. Yet immigration, you know, is The movement of people from other countries, here is a huge issue, right? In America, something has happened, a big deal in Mexico. Claudia Sheinbaum was recently elected as the first female president of Mexico. So that's a whole thing, if people know about Mexico. So how might America's relationship with Mexico shift gears with her as leader under either Trump or Biden, really? I mean, both of them have fairly conservative positions in some ways. What impact do you think that might have on how we talk about immigration in this country?
Be helpful and say, be helpful. We're just not going to roast people today. If I'm going to be completely honest with you, I don't think that it will change much, because most of the rhetoric around immigration in this country isn't actually rooted in facts. That most of the rhetoric in this country around immigration is rooted in like xenophobia, racism, and just like all fuckery, right? Like it's not actually rooted in the idea that there are, multinational corporations and huge meatpacking plants that are aggressively recruiting people, that the U.S. is contributing to the conditions that create these migrants, these economic migrants in the first place. And if I'm going to be very honest, both of the major candidates in the United States and most of the major candidates from the Mexican political elite will maintain sort of the relationships as is. I think that the change that we are attempting to see is going to have to come through, and you guys are going to probably be tired of, no, you're not, you know who I am, organizing, right? That we are going to have to organize for the immigration laws that make sense, that take into account the conditions, that sort of, one, again, create these migrants, to just the idea that we have several people, several families who contribute to our economy now, et cetera, that very little has to do with the election of the new president in Mexico. But what I will say is that electing Mexico's first woman president is also really interesting for those of us who believe that, that sometimes people need to see it in order to be it. I think that as we head towards, global boiling, and sort of building the future world that we want to live in, foreclosing half of the world's population from leadership doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, a good idea doesn't care where it comes from. And so having people who have been socialized throughout the history of the world to ask themselves, like, how are the children, right? How are families? Foreclosing those people from leadership just feels wild, while we're trying to figure out how to save ourselves. So I'm encouraged by that, and I hope that it's the beginning of a trend. We're starting to see tons of women contesting for power at every level of government. And to be clear, I'm not like an identity essentialist. Like, I know a bunch of trash ass women leaders. Just keeping it funky. Like, I know a bunch of trash ass black leaders who hate black people, high key. So I'm not, an identity essentialist, but I do think it's wild, that you think about 237 years in a place like the United States, and there's never been a black woman governor in any of the states. That's wild, given the role that we see black women play in sort of government and in politics and policy. So what I will say is that the election of Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico, while it's not likely to fundamentally change foreign and diplomatic relations with the United States, or managing corporate interests, it is interesting. And it does create an opportunity for organizers and organizing. It really does come down to who do you want to be your target? Who would you rather be negotiating with? And I'm certain that activists and organizers and progressives and people who are thinking about race and gender and class and climate and the future of Mexico are happy to have her on the other side of the table, because she reads books. That's important.
That's
So,
very
Yeah,
important.
reading is fundamental. That's what they say.
I'm told.
Speaking of woman presidents, the time has come for us to talk about Kamala. We should probably talk about Kamala Harris. Yeah. So Tiffany, why do you think she receives so much negative backlash? Like, what is that about? And, do you want to run down for us some of Kamala's receipts? Does she have receipts, of her successes that we should maybe not forget or sleep on?
Well, I think there's perception and then there's reality, right? So people perceive Kamala Harris as the media has told them, right? They look at her and they see, oh, she's beautiful. She's this woman, and she laughs. They make fun. They say, oh, well, Trump this week, he said she's cackling Kamala. All right, so I mean, these are the things that they use against her.
But he just likes nicknames.
Last week it was laughing Kamala. So I mean, it's always something. But if you watch Fox News, they talk about her as if she does nothing, right? She hasn't done anything. She has no receipts. But the reality is, Kamala has met with over 100 world leaders. She has traveled all across the world. She's been to Africa. She was one of the first VP, I believe, to go to Africa last March. So there are things that Kamala is doing that are not shown in the media. You will never see it. You will not, if you turn on MSNBC on any given day, you will never hear about what Kamala Harris is doing. And I think that is why people don't understand what is happening. We had our first Black Maternal Health Week because of Kamala. As you said, having a woman at the table matters, and having her there to talk about our issues is what is making a difference, right? Because think about it, if there's no Black woman at the table, which most of the time there aren't in DC, there's no one talking about fibroids. There's no one talking about any Black woman pregnancy. I mean, just anything that affects us, period, is not talked about. So I think the fact that she is there is really important. And as you said, and one other thing, the border thing. The border czar, they love talking about her as the borders. That was not her role. Her role was to go to the Northern Triangle and be able to discuss the reasons why we have migration. What are the root causes of migration? And how do we stop certain things from happening if we don't even know the root cause? And like I said, these are things that they will not talk about in the media, but I think there's things that need to be addressed, and I'm happy that she's there, and the future is bright. Let's just put it like that. We'll see what happens.
It's going to be an interesting year. I think we can all
Few
sense
weeks.
that.
It's going to be an interesting few weeks.
Yes, it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks.
What you know that we don't know?
I
I was gonna say, I thought the election was November 5th.
Yeah, we have to get a nominee, so.
Ah.
And the way the media is talking, stay tuned.
Okay.
To be continued. All right, well, I think it's time for some audience Q&A. What do you think? You guys got questions? You got opinions? I would say, please keep it brief. I will cut you off if you start to speechify, okay? We will have to move on. Okay, so I don't know if we have anybody with, it might be good. We need a mic here. Does someone have do we have an extra mic?
Yeah.
Yeah, for the live stream, we need to pass a mic. All right, thank you.
Yes, I'm not going to do a speech, but I did want to say thank y'all so much. Black women are really the shit, if I can say that here. So thank you so much for being just real and authentic. I did have a question just regarding just Black women in general, especially young Black women like myself trying to get involved in the political space. And oftentimes we don't talk a lot about Black people not being a monolith. And even when we talk about generational differences, what advice would you give to young women of color, especially young Black women trying to get involved? How to combat maybe some of the nuances even within our own communities with gatekeeping and generational differences, so that way we're not discouraged from getting involved, because we do know the world's ever changing, and so I just wanted to get y'all's perspective on that.
Well,
Go ahead.
Okay, so I would say the easiest way to get involved is social media, right? Get on social media, start telling your opinion, and that's what I did. I started when Trump got elected. I was pissed off. I got on social media and grew my following, and become a respecter. Be transparent. Tell people what you think, what you feel, and in your authentic voice. I think that matters to people. And so for me, it was really doing the work of just kind of getting out there, going to events, meeting candidates, You work for me. I don't work for you. You want to be the person that represents me. So I want to hear from you. I go to debates. I go to rallies. I want to hear what they have to talk about, and then I carry that back to social media so people understand what is happening. And that's what I did for Angela. I went to all the media was not covering it. I went to the events. I talked through what was happening. Got on TikTok, told everybody about her. There was things that were happening in the race that people didn't know about. And people were pissed, and black voters were pissed because the guy she was going against, he called people that represent us as delegates low level. And so there are ways to get out there and be able to have those conversations, but just be yourself. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I would concur with that. You know, I was a younger person when I started Jack and Jill Politics 300 years ago. And, you know, at the time, you know, I was started as anonymous, and, you know, my mother kept having these dreams. She was like, I feel like you had a baby. Is there something you want to tell me? Like, you know, like she just kept, I was like, okay, there's something I need to tell you. I am out here on these internet streets, okay, picking fights and, you know, saying spicy things, you know, and, you know, we actually had a family meeting where they were like, so Cheryl, what if you stop doing that? Is that an option? Like, because we're afraid someone might try to kill you, you know, or this is going to damage your career in some way. And, you know, I had to give that serious thought, right? Like, you know, what kind of risk am I really taking, you know, being active in this very out loud way? And you know what? Everything inside me said, you know what? They can come and get me. This inside me is more important. And yeah, I'm talking in a different way. Now it's, you know, pretty common, you know, that people are sort of culturally, you know, there's a little satire, particularly among black women. But at the time, you know, that blog, that type of dialogue was very unique. So, you know, what I would say to you is, you know, listen to your heart, you know, and don't let, you know, people will try to make you smaller. That happens to black women a lot, where we're too much, as you said. You know, we're just a little, the muchness is so much, right? But you know what? That muchness that they're reacting to, you know, like, you can let them make you smaller, or you can use it as a way to inspire them to be bigger, to find the bigness in themselves, right? Because you are so big inside. Are you reading me?
I'm reading.
Okay, all right now.
Thank you.
We've got someone in the back, can you pass it back?
I want to just chime in,
Yeah.
this is for everybody too.
Pass it back.
Yeah, pass the mic
Yeah,
back.
well, yeah.
So while the mic is being passed, I want to remind everybody that there's an entire infrastructure of political activism. There's real jobs. And honestly, I didn't know that. I didn't know that until I was invited to Netroots. And I was invited to Netroots because Netroots came to Pittsburgh, and I was pinned as a local activist, and it was like they told somebody to go out and find the local activists and bring them into Netroots. And so that's how I got to Netroots, honestly. So I didn't know, even then, I didn't know that there was a whole pipeline of like political organizing job paid. And I was thinking like, wait, you get paid to talk to people? And because I mean, we were doing that volunteer like every week. So, but the irony is that I didn't realize also how, quote, white it is. So there needs to be a change. It has changed a little bit, right? But keep in mind, Black Voters Matter is new. It's still new. Black Voters Matter, I think, in 2020, they were only in 11 states. Black Voters Matter should be in all 50 states. Like, don't say that you want to take us seriously and you're not providing the funds. And because also, like, Black Voters Matter, they put out, I mean, this is just one organization, it's just one example, but they hire political organizers across different states. You could be that organizer. You could be the organizer for your neighborhood, for your community. And I just had no idea that this whole infrastructure existed. And my last offering, because Netroots has turned into an offering, you know, I was in touch with a lot of the activists in Ferguson, and I saw that, like, a lot of them were trying to get the attention of all the famous people. So anybody that was out there who had been rapping that wanted to change, you know, they were engaged in politics without being an official political organizer. So I took it upon myself to make sure that all of them were registered for Netroots Nation, because Netroots was in Ferguson one year, or in St. Louis, okay? But what upset me is I realized that a lot of them did not get picked up as organizers, and they should have been. And at the time, like I told you all, I was caregiving for my mother, so I couldn't be like actively pursuing, but I was like, let me just make sure they have this opportunity. I was telling them to go there. But that's what I mean, like, we need to do better. Everybody needs to do better. First of all, if you're volunteering, stop volunteering. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way.
Whoa.
No. Hold on. Yeah, I know that we gonna fight.
Next question.
No. And I don't mean like, I just mean literally, like oftentimes our labor is exploited. And if you don't know that you could be getting paid to do this kind of work, it's really, really important, because I still volunteer. I don't mean like don't ever volunteer. I don't mean that, because we do need you. But point is, there's a whole infrastructure out there. Apply for these jobs. Yes, volunteer. That is kind of how you get started and you get introduced, and make sure that other people know about and expand these opportunities.
All right.
that
Thank
okay?
you. Okay, we've got, and we'll get to you in just a second. Yes, in the back.
Okay, so I want to hear your thoughts on Black women and reproductive rights, specifically abortion. So taking into consideration the history of this country and the exploitation of Black women's wombs, it's a very touchy subject, and I hear very often this sort of sentiment that Black women, like, what we need is not abortions. What we need is to continue to birth and to have a representation in this country grow. And while I feel the same way. That's the face I make. But to me, it seems so obvious that the solution is being able to choose if, when, and how you have children. But that doesn't, I understand the fear that comes with what seems like an attack on Black babies, or the absence of Black babies. And I want you to talk a little bit about how we shift that perspective, because I understand the fear that it stems from, but that's not the reality. The reality isn't not being able to make that choice.
It's a great question, and I would ask that panelists keep it brief so we can take maybe one or two more questions.
I'll say this, the
Yeah.
decision to
Thank
have a family is not just a moral and a healthcare decision, it's also a financial, like economic decision. There are constantly attacks on Black women, Black women's bodies, that what you are talking about is essentially right-wing rhetoric that has been adopted by some members of our community in order to shame Black women out of their bodily autonomy so that they're easier to control, right? So I know what I tell those people when I encounter them in my real life, but I imagine that you are asking for sort of a broader question about how to think about it and how to respond. And I would say that abortion, IVF, all of those fall under the umbrella of bodily autonomy. Right? And so the sanctity and the sacredness of one's body, how you seek care, how you seek pleasure, that's not really the business of the state or some like thumb warrior. Full stop. Bodily autonomy is what we're seeking and what we're fighting for, and that includes abortion, but really it is like, a sovereignty and a sanctity of our body and healthcare and all the decisions that we make about it. That's what we're fighting for.
Well, and here's what I'll say. I've worked with a number like Planned Parenthood, NARAL, National, what is it? NAA.
NARAL.
Yeah, no, not NARAL.
NAPOF?
Yes, NAPOF. There are plenty of Black and brown babies. There's lots of Black and brown babies in America, okay? It's a gaslighting. Right? The real problem is the health of Black women. We have a much, much higher mortality rate, maternal mortality rate. That's the real problem. The reason certain people are making it, about that is because it's gaslighting. Their real agenda is more white babies. okay? I give you Elon Musk, right? So who's out here just trying to make as many white babies as he can because he's worried about that, right? And has got some other people. So I think it's really important that, we not get sucked into the narratives that people are trying to put out there, right? And that we push back and say, no. I know you're trying to make it about this, but you don't care about us. You don't care about our babies. Because if you did, our healthcare would look different. We wouldn't have 5 times the mortality rate, right? If you really cared about Black babies. What you're trying to do is make it harder for everyone, especially a certain group of people, to make those choices. Yeah. All right, we have
And
someone
then what
here.
happened when the babies get here?
Well, exactly. Where's the pro-life there? Who are the people who are cutting Medicaid, or turning away free lunch dollars in these states? Go ahead, girl.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. So my question is about the upcoming election, and what would you say to voters who are apathetic, have just checked out? And the second part to that question is, do you think the conversation around replacing Biden is valid?
Oh, boy. It's a great,
Like a totally easy question, no big deal,
All right,
NBD.
As far as apathetic voters, I will say it like this. I talked to my niece. She's 18 years old, right? I said, are you planning to vote? She's about to go to college. She said, no. And I said, why not? She said, because I don't like either one. And I said, well, do you know about the Supreme Court? And she said, kind of. Mind you, she just graduated from high school. So I explained to her about, I am a single issue Supreme Court voter because I know what the Supreme Court can and will do to harm us. We talked about the Supreme Court earlier. Clarence Thomas Alito Clarence Thomas is 78, Alito is 73. They will be replaced if Trump is elected. So I think the thing is you have to think about not short term, but long term, because their decisions are not going to impact us today. They will impact us 30 years from now. That Chevron decision that just came down, insane. No one's talking about it because they're too busy talking about Biden. There is a lot of things that the Supreme Court can think about. Immunity, right? Trump has immunity. Right now he can do whatever he wants. At least he thinks he can, right? But the Supreme Court to me is the most important. Presidents pick the Supreme Court justice. The Senate is going to confirm that person to be on that court for a lifetime, not for 5 years, not for 10 years, for a lifetime. That person, Biden will be long gone in the grave, and that Supreme Court justice that Trump will put on there that is 40-something years old will be on there for another maybe 40 years. So I think it's about long term, and I think that's how we should frame it to people who are apathetic about voting. And as far as the Biden, listen, he has a press conference today. I think everybody's going to be watching. It's at 6:30. It's going to be make or break for him, right? We saw what happened in the debate. People want to see what he brings to the table. The House, there's people in the House that are, not a fan right now, and we have George Clooney, which I don't care about. But there are people that are nervous, right? They're nervous about November. They see Project 2025. They see what could potentially happen, and so everyone is freaking out about the polls. What is going to happen? What is going to happen? We'll wait and see. I said I'm taking it day by day, hour by hour, because there's constantly a development on what's happening with the Biden situation, or as I call it, DebateGate 2024.
All right.
Taking her glasses off.
So I'm an organizer, right? And here's what I know. You have twice as many ears as you do mouths. So if you're talking to people in your life who are apathetic about voting, I think that as a listener, it's important for you to find out why, right? People will tell you the things that they care about. They'll tell you all the things that they hate. Well, I will. But for the most part, like if someone is obsessive or really into something, if there's a vision for themselves or their families or their communities that they have, like folks will tell you that. And I think that as you're a person, it sounds like who's trying to convince them to participate, that being able to connect the thing that they told you they care about or the thing that keeps them up at night with the act of voting feels really, really important. I think that we fetishize the presidential election if we keep it a stack, right? Here's what I realized when I realized that the president was like in a lot of ways a limited role, but that it's a party, right? Because Barack Hussein and Michelle Robinson Obama are like amazing humans to me, and they oversaw a government that did great harm to poor people, black people, women, and femmes by virtue of the U.S. government and the institutions that make up the U.S. government. So guess what? Pete Buttigieg still out here trying to get our bridges and roads together, right? That the people over at HHS are still trying to figure out how to keep us safe and prevent, mass deaths for the next pandemic. The people at the Department of Education are fighting for their lives, right? The folks at the EPA are trying to make sure that it's not shit, piss, and oil in the water that we drinking, right? And so, like, there's a full whole government. Like, there's no world where Joseph Robinette Biden is doing all of that by himself. And you know it, I know it, right? And so, like, yes, it's fun to roast. Yes, the Democratic donors are freaking out. I think part of it is because the strategy of going all the way in, electorally going all the way in on the party was never how we won. It's not how we won in 2020. We won in 2020 by investing in C3s and C4s and IEs and independent organizations and people who had real relationships in these communities. Our folks went out knocking door to door looking like beekeepers, and the Biden and Harris campaign did knock on one door in 2020, right? So what I'm telling you is that no one man should have all that power, because he don't. Because he doesn't, right? One, two, again, the loudest voices, the disgraced New York Times, the disgraced former president of the United States, and disgraced donors and people who, again, are keeping the sort of the world building, the work of building the new America that we're trying to figure out. There's a distance that they have from that, right? So now you can freak out and be like, we're just gonna get a new person. Who's the new person? Is it the vice president? Oh, y'all don't want to talk about that. Y'all don't want to talk about that, right? Because the 25th Amendment says it's automatic, right? And the times where the 25th, I'm not going to assume that everyone here knows, 25th Amendment says that if the president dies or becomes incapacitated, vice president automatically becomes president, vice president automatically picks their vice president. So all of this hand-wringing, you can't convince me that it ain't got nothing to do with the fact that you all don't want Kamala Debbie Harris to become America's first black woman president, and I see it. Say it with your chest, right? Say it with your chest, right? And so these people who are like, Biden's got to go, who are you replacing them with?
They don't know.
Who are you replacing them with, right? So stop. There's a world where, you know what? I'm not going to speak ill. What I will say is I'm not caping for any individual. What I am saying is that there's a process. And there's a process that we must participate in if we are going to try to figure out, again, what it looks like to build the world that we want to live in, to build the cities, the counties, the states that we want to live in. And president ain't the only thing that's on the ballot, right? So I'm telling you that all of our reproductive rights went to die in Mississippi. I'm telling you that in Alabama, they are attacking IVF. Like at first, did you like babies or do you hate babies, right? Like you need to pick a side, right? Pick a side. And that there's so much more at stake outside of this cult of personality contest. And I don't watch bum fights on the internet, and I don't watch old man fighting. I think it's weird.
All right. The last panel went a little over, and we have gone a little over. Before we start to wrap up, I'm going to get, something from each of the panelists, where you can find them, what they're up to. I want to recognize this beautiful black family. Will you stand up? You and the kids. Stand up. Stand up.
Pittsburgh,
Yes.
Chicago.
Sit in the front row. Mother of the Year. Can we give you like a medal, a congressional medal for, the young generation? Look, I grew up listening to NPR with my parents from the day I was born, every single damn day. So, and that led to this, okay? That's why I'm here. So, we know that you, too, are our future, okay? And you will get your I Survived, Ask a Sista t-shirt after class, okay? Yes, ma'am, thank you. All right, panelists, we're over time, like
It's
way
okay.
over
We
time.
can do it. We can do it.
All right, one last question. You all have to be short though, okay? Because we're over. All right.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes. We're being led down a rabbit hole. All this mess about Biden's competence and his mental capacity, he has people behind him who will be leading him, who will be guiding him, who will be assisting him, just as Barack had. Trump has people who will let him continue to lie. There is no choice for us as black people, brown people, or people, progressive people who want to see this country go forward. 2025 project is real. And if we don't do something about it by electing people on those down ballots who can make sure that those things that they want to put in progress doesn't happen, we got complacent. We got a black president. Oh, yeah, we done made it. And everybody else went down ballot and got people on the Board of Elections, the commissioners, the this, the that. And those laws that are making our maternal rights taken away, those laws that are putting us back into prisons, those laws that are building prisons instead of rehabilitation programs or spending money on criminal justice, those people were put in. And now we're getting the laws and the rules that we're getting now that are taking us back 40, 50 years. Our voting rights are being taken back. Come on, let's stop fooling ourselves. We don't have a choice. We must elect a Democratic Party down the line so that we can get what we need to continue this country in a democratic mode.
Yes, ma'am. Our fifth panelist, everyone. Panelist number 5, yes. And it's really important, to hear from those who have walked before us, okay? Who have walked before us. All right, we have to wrap up. I'm going to ask our panelists to tell us what is next for them. I'll let you know where can you find me on LinkedIn. I've sort of given up on every other platform pretty much, so find me there. Maybe sometimes Instagram if you want pictures of my kid. He's really cute. And havingImpact.org. What's next for you and where can we find you, Dr. Goddess?
Well, I'm Dr. Goddess everywhere. So if you look up Dr. Goddess anywhere, you'll find me on Threads. I still call Twitter. Twitter's always going to be Twitter to me. So either Dr. Goddess or Dr. Goddess Arts. And I just want to also emphasize that, the slogan for Black Politics Matter is turning our pain into political power because Black Lives Matter. And I think it's really important for us to always, when you're talking to people, especially somebody that's apathetic or they just don't know, ask them what their pain points are. Like, what are you struggling with right now? And you'll find that they're struggling with student loans, they're struggling with housing, they're struggling with food. And we know what the lines are directly from their pain to the political power decision that affects their pressure points. And I think that connecting the dots these days, we laugh that like we're a little bit older, but we grew up with Schoolhouse Rock,
Speak for yourself.
right? And we don't have Schoolhouse Rock no more. So this generation, they need their own version of Schoolhouse Rock. So anyway, I'm out here, y'all. Find me at Dr. Goddess, you'll see me.
Nsay?
nsayufa.com and nsayufa on social media. Follow me on TikTok.
Very
I don't do no
easy.
dancing though.
Thank you. And Ms. Carla?
All right, well, you can catch me at TIFY330 at Twitter. And you can find me at Candileet_Tiff on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads, which I don't really use that much. But for me, it's really helping to get Democrats elected, like she said.
Yeah.
That is our goal. And like I said, Angela Alsobrooks for Senate, Maryland. If you live in Maryland,
Yes.
make sure you vote for her.
All right, so did you have fun? Did you have fun? Yes. Did you learn anything? Did you hear something you hadn't heard before? All right, that's what we do at Ask a Sista. You know, so take this with you. Take this out into the world, the Sista that's now within you. And make more sisters who need to be asked. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, y'all.